Hi, I'm McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today I'm going to be doing a lengthy book review on The Way of the Superior Man by Deida. I'll be using this mind map, which is courtesy of a Mr. Joseph Rodriguez, who has a dynamite YouTube channel. I've went to his channel for a lot of book reviews, and his work is outstanding. So if you'd like to check out his channel, I'll put a link in the notes below. And if you have any comments about this video, please put them down below. Or if you've read this book before and like it and you'd like to add something to it or a favorite quote of yours, please share it. Let's get into it. This book is written specifically for people who have a more masculine sexual essence and their lovers who will have a more feminine sexual essence, since you always attract your sexual reciprocal. Men or women possess both inner masculine and inner feminine qualities. This is true for both. We get really caught up in the idea that men are supposed to be masculine all the time or women are supposed to be feminine all the time, when the reality is there are moments where men appear to be feminine and women appear to be masculine. And that is part of human nature. But the idea of attraction and the long-term look at things, they are polar opposites, right? And one attracts the other. So the masculine wants to feel the bliss of a life lived at the edge. And if he doesn't have the balls to do it himself, he'll watch it on TV, in sporting events, and cop shows. Now, this really resonated with myself because I do watch a lot of sports. I watch less now, but I love my basketball. I used to be a huge American football fan. But if you look at it, this is a passive way of conveying masculinity, right? Because you're a part of the team. You're a part of the action. Fans in the audience even get in fights over their teams, right? And so if you can't find it in your life, you can find it on TV, right? And if you can't go out hunting, you can watch hunting on TV. If you can't go out fishing, you can watch fishing on TV. My father does it all the time now in his older age, when he used to actually do the event. And to take it a step further, one of the reasons I love basketball is growing up, I played a lot of basketball, and now I play a lot less and watch a lot more. And so this is a passive way of conveying some masculinity, right? Masculine. The mission or the search for freedom is the priority of the masculine, whereas the search for love is the priority of the feminine. The Way of the Superior Man is a book written explicitly for people who have already achieved respect for other genders and sexual preferences, and who consider men and women to be social, economic, and political equals. Now we are ready to move to the next stage, grounded in this mutual respect and equality, but celebrating the sexual, spiritual passions inherent in the masculine-feminine polarity. So let's dig a little deeper here and get into part 1, A Man's Way. And this is a really good opening chapter of the book. Stop hoping for a completion of anything in life. Most men make the error of thinking that one day it will be done. They think, if I can work enough, then one day I could rest. Or one day my woman will understand something and then she will stop complaining. Or I'm only doing this now so that one day I can do what I really want with my life. The masculine error is to think that eventually things will be different in some fundamental way. They won't. It never ends. As long as life continues, the creative challenge is to tussle, play, and make love with the present moment while giving your unique gift. What is your unique gift? I don't know. I don't know what your unique gift is. But I do know that we have probably more than one. And circling back, think about this. If you can work enough, then one day I can rest. This applies to people that have a job where you're working 30 years to get a pension, which is an admirable and noble thing, and it's a goal with a finish line, and that's good and fine. My father worked 25, 30 years, I believe, and got a pension. But at the end of it, you still have to deal with, how are you giving your unique gift? How are you having a purpose in life? One day, my woman will understand something, and then she will stop complaining. What if she never does stop complaining? It's an interesting question to ask yourself. Live with an open heart, even if it hurts. Closing down in the midst of pain is a denial of a man's true nature. A superior man is free in feeling and action, even amidst great pain and hurt. If necessary, a man should live with a hurting heart rather than a closed one. He should learn to stay in the wound of pain and act with spontaneous skill and love, even from that place. So anyone else going through a breakup, and a lot of people come to my channel for breakups, this is a significant statement to come back to. A man should live with a hurting heart rather than a closed one. And what I think he means by a hurting heart is deal with pain. Pain is healing. And deal with the fact that if you are in a breakup, that it's going to hurt. And face that head on. Don't face it with drinking or denial or blaming, or saying you're never going to try to meet another woman again. Deal with that individual place up front. Deal with that hurting heart. And at some point, it's probably going to find a way to heal. How long that'll take, I'm not sure. You're not sure. But it's a lot better route than just closing the door, right? Closing the door on your heart and your heart's desires. Live as if your father were dead. Well, this is a powerful statement. And when you first hear this statement, you think, what the hell? I don't want my father to die. And it's coming from someone whose father's still alive, thankfully. It kind of catches you off guard. A man must love his father and yet be free of his father's expectations and criticisms in order to be a free man. And I don't think this is limited to your father. This could be your mother. If you were raised only by your mother or a grandparent, it doesn't necessarily have to be your father's expectations. It could be someone that was a mentor, a coach, a teacher, someone who's got an umbrella over you, and you're asking yourself, wait, is mom going to be okay with that? Or is dad going to be okay with that? What he's saying in this quote is a man must love his father and yet be free of his father's expectations. At some point, you need to shed the snake skin, is what I call it, and get into a place where you say, I'm living my life. I'm living my life for me. I'm doing the best I can. And some of my father's expectations are something I no longer answer to. And you need to do that to become a free man. Powerful stuff here. Know your real edge and don't fake it. Know your real edge and don't fake it. It is honorable for a man to admit his fears, resistance, and edge of practice. It is simply true that each man has his limit, his capacity for growth, and his destiny. But it is dishonorable for him to lie to himself or others about his real place. He shouldn't pretend he is more enlightened than he is, nor should he stop short of his actual edge. The more a man is playing his real edge, the more valuable he is as good company for other men, the more he can be trusted to be authentic and fully present. Where a man's edge is located is less important than whether he is actually living his edge in truth, rather than being lazy or deluded. So you as an individual need to find that edge for yourself. And I'm sure people have gone over the edge, right? But I think deeper than that is, are you being fake or are you being unauthentic? Are you being real with yourself? And I think this comes with age and life experience. And not just being critical of yourself, but actually unpacking your actions, unpacking things that you don't like. If someone says something about you and you really don't like it, you really have to unpack, why don't I like that? Is it actually true? And where you're at right now in life, are you challenging yourself? That is the edge, right? Joseph Rodriguez, who I mentioned earlier, that's a part of these notes, often talks about being in a flow state, which is a level of challenge which you can attain, which you can get to, but also at the same time is something that keeps you in a flow state. It keeps you in a state where you are losing track of time because you're so interested in the challenge, and you see the challenge as something that you can overcome. Great book on that is called Flow. And I'm not going to be able to say his name. It's Mikhail something Chalowitsky, but I'll put that in the show notes also. Always hold your deepest realization. Eternity must be a man's home, moment by moment. Without it, he is lost. Always striving, grasping at puffs of smoke. A man must do anything necessary to glimpse and then stabilize this even fresh realization and organize his life around it. Moment by moment. This is something I've realized in my own life, that sometimes we take a moment and we internalize it. And what I mean by that, we live off that moment, whether it's good or bad, for a long period of time, and that moment is done. And what is your deepest realization is a deep statement. And it's something that I ponder myself. Make your life an ongoing process of being who you are. Connect to your source. Your source would be your subconscious, and your subconscious holds all of your life experiences and all your knowledge accumulated. So that is your source in my book. Being an ongoing process, making your life an ongoing process of being who you are is being authentic. Okay? Never change your mind just to please a woman. Wow. How many people have done this in their life? Or even a woman has done this for a man, right? If a woman suggests something that changes a man's perspective, then he should make a new decision based on his new perspective. But he should never betray his own deepest knowledge and intuition in order to please his woman or go along with her. Both she and he will be weakened by such an action. They will grow to resent each other. And the crust of accumulated inauthenticity will burden their love as well as their capacity for free action. So the translation for this, because this is really deep. This is deep stuff, and it's poetic the way he's writing. It's highly eloquent. But the simple version is to never change your mind just to please a woman. And you shouldn't do this for friends either. If you have principles, you have values, and you have good values, and your woman asks you to do something that you don't feel like fulfills those values, you have a right to say no, or I disagree. Let's look into this a little further. Let's talk about this deeper. To blindly do something just to please your wife and make them happy is a recipe for disaster long term, because at some point you're going to grow contempt from being this way and acting this way, and eventually the pot's going to boil over, and that's when people erupt, and they erupt like a volcano. They erupt in a way where they go, wow, I didn't mean to say that. And they create a passive-aggressive attitude where they're being passive, they're being passive, they're being passive. Have you ever had a friend or a neighbor and they had a dog, and the dog seems really friendly and nice and everyone's petting it, and then, someone is petting the dog and they hit a spot on the dog, and maybe that there was an injury there before, and the dog goes, "Arr, arr, arr, arr," and snaps, and their teeth start showing, and you go, what the fuck happened to, little Susie Q, the dog, right? The dog that was so sweet. And everyone's going, oh, well, she has a sensitive spot on her hip. Well, what you're doing when you're doing passive aggressive behavior and you're always pleasing your wife at the sacrifice of your own values and thoughts is eventually you're making a sensitive space in your mind where that's growing deeper and deeper. And eventually when that sensitive spot gets touched again and again, you're going to snap like that dog did. And the dog doesn't even know it's doing it. It's just reacting. And at some point, you're going to do the same thing if you keep pleasing your woman when it doesn't line up with your values, right? And you're thinking you're doing the right thing just to make peace. But the reality is you need to nip it in the butt from the beginning because it's going to become an expectation in your relationship that you take shit. And she's going to sense if you take shit even when you don't agree with her. And she's going to find ways to push your buttons and get her way. And in that process, right, in that process, she's creating a playbook of how she's going to get what she wants when she wants it. And unless you stand up for yourself, and what I mean by it is stand up for yourself because you believe it's the right thing to do. You believe it's not something that is kosher with your beliefs. So this comes up a lot. Please put it in the comments if you've been in this situation before where you know someone or you've done this yourself where you've changed your mind just to please a woman. Your purpose must come before your relationship. Now, you see this in a lot of movies, okay? I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie The Legend of the Falls with Brad Pitt, and it's kind of a gaga googa movie, but the main character, which is Brad Pitt, is constantly putting his purpose in himself before the relationship, and women can't get enough of him. He's always leaving because he has to go do something that's more superior and stronger towards his purpose over and over again. And you see this again and again in movies. And the hero who is masculine in these movies is constantly creating or putting a purpose that is superior to the relationship and more important to the relationship first, and then he'll get back to his woman afterwards. And in the moment, his woman's sad, she's crying, but when he leaves, she respects him. Every man knows that the highest purpose in life cannot be reduced to any particular relationship. If a man prioritizes his relationship over his highest purpose, he weakens himself, disserves the universe, and cheats his woman of an authentic man who can offer her full, undivided presence. So we often see a lot of men when they go away for a military mission or they go away for training, and then their woman stays back. You see this in movies, but this is also part of real life. And how does a woman stay in a relationship like that? Because she understands his purpose. The man puts his service above the relationship, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But the guy is putting his purpose at the highest point, and women respect that. And I'll take it a step further. Fellow humans respect that. And the only way you don't respect it if the purpose is not who you are, if the purpose is something highly, highly selfish, and if the purpose is something that goes against most human values, okay? Lean just beyond your edge. So he talks about this edge again. In any given moment, a man's growth is optimized if he leans just beyond his edge, his capacity, his fear. He should not be too lazy, happily stagnating in the zone of security and comfort. So we also call this a comfort zone, right? Nor should he push far beyond his edge, stressing himself unnecessarily, unable to metabolize his experience. He should lean just slightly beyond the edge of fear and discomfort, constantly in everything he does. So this is a great statement to come back to about your purpose and where you're at and how often you're challenging yourself. This goes back to being in a flow state. This goes back to finding an area where you can challenge yourself and believe that you can overcome the challenge eventually, right? This is why a lot of people go to university. You know, a university creates a challenge. It's a 4-year challenge with a finish line, with a reward, which is the degree and meeting new people and having new mentors, having new life experiences. But Also, what you're doing is you're putting yourself at an edge in certain classes, because let's say you major in history or you major in English, you still got to take some general ed classes. You still got to deal with some teachers you don't like. You still got to be challenged. And this is what happens. A lot of people will come to a point where they'll have a professor that is really difficult, and they have to find a way to pass that class or get through it. And that's taking them to the edge, right? That's their challenge. In any walk of life of what you're doing, the climb up the mountain is the treat, not the mountaintop view. So when you're being challenged and you're being pushed to the edge, this is really you at your best. You being on the couch watching TV, having gotten the girl of your dreams, or being in a great relationship, and then you stop going to the gym. And then you started watching TV and having pizza every Friday night with your buddies and having 6 beers or 7 beers. And that wasn't the man you were when you first met. And this happens a lot. So when you lean just beyond your edge, who knows what that edge is for you? But the edge he's talking about is an edge that's challenging, that is doing something that you're proud of, doing something of significance to society, doing something that you don't regret later on, and you won't regret later on. And getting in your comfort zone and being lazy, I think, are a lot of people's part of their arcs of being a human. You're going to have stages like this where you get really happy and you're proud of yourself and you've reached a goal, and you kind of don't really have a goal in place to replace that one. So you kind of sit there and you just bask in your greatness, or you bask in your happiness. And at some point it stagnates. And just like a pool on the side of a river that grows a bunch of green moss on top of it, you want to get back in the river and keep moving, because that's the beauty of the river, is the flow, right? Do it for love. That's a statement with a lot of twists and turns. The way a man penetrates the world should be the same way he penetrates his woman, not merely for personal gain or pleasure, but to magnify love, openness, and depth. So that's a really deep statement. The way a man penetrates the world should be the same way he penetrates his woman, not merely for personal gain or pleasure, but to magnify love, openness, and depth. So I think what we could get from this also is that how many times when I look past at my own life, how many times are you just searching for pleasure, right? And when you look at really magnifying events in your life, they weren't pleasure-packed, right? The things you're most proud of doing, the most significant life experience, weren't just full of pleasure, right? It's like, let's say you had a moment where you were a child, let's say, somewhere in your teen years or even younger, and there was a really good time where your family life was really good. Your parents were getting along, your brother and sister were, a couple years apart, and you guys had a really good time. And it wasn't all fun and games, because there was, some times where you got hurt. There was some time, but you were there for each other. The point of this is that in the pursuit of small pleasures, you lose light of the fact that, you're not doing it just for pleasure, right? You're doing it for love. And I think what he means by that, love is deeper than just pleasure. Love is unconditional. Love is supportive. Love is deeper than pleasure or personal gain. And you know that when you have it. And I talk about this on my channel, that everyone has a different definition of love. And that's absolutely true. But you need to be very comfortable and very clear on what yours is. Because when you come across an individual that you love and you care about, and their definition of love doesn't really line up with you, you're going to have problems. So that's something to think about. That's something to define. And to take this statement, do it for love, what does that mean to you? Maybe share that in the comments below. Enjoy your friend's criticism. This is a great statement, and it's more difficult to do for a lot of people than we think. A man's capacity to receive another man's direct criticism is a measure of his capacity to receive masculine energy. If he doesn't have a good relationship to masculine energy, his father, then he will act like a woman and be hurt or defensive rather than make use of other criticisms. So, I mean, words can hurt you. And finely placed words which push buttons can hurt you. And when you're coming out of a breakup, what's said at the end of the breakup or the last few months actually stays with you for a long time. But if you've ever met a man that's really masculine and really centered and stoic, he's able to take those comments, he's able to reframe them in his head, and he's able to hold back an emotional reaction that he knows is just in the moment. He's able to hold back saying something that he knows isn't exactly what he feels. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is when someone hurts you and they pierce you with words and you react instantly, what you do is you generally try to hurt them back if the words were really something that, penetrated your ego. But if something does that to you, you need to take a step back and go, why is that upsetting me? Consider the source. And if it does upset you, how are you going to change that? I've talked about this in some of my videos that there was a breakup where an ex said I was lazy. And she said it in a different way a couple different times. And after the breakup happened, it really stuck with me. And it hurt me for a moment. And then I started using it as fuel. And I said, you know what? This is not true about my character or who I am. And I'm going to prove it to myself. I didn't go back to her and say, why'd you call me lazy? I can't believe you said that to me. I can't believe she said that to me. I kept it inside. I digested it. I spit it back out. And I said, nope, that's not me. And I used it almost as a battle cry to move forward. And I kept referring back to it when I would get lazy as something that I wasn't going to accept in my unconscious. I wasn't going to accept that. But I didn't have to go to her and explain myself. I didn't have to go to her and tell her, hey, that really hurt my feelings. No, I took it. I thought to myself, how can I use this constructively and move forward? And that's what I did. If you don't know your purpose, discover it now. So this is very difficult for some people because it takes time sometimes. It takes life experience. It takes you trying new things. It takes you reflecting. And sometimes it takes some isolation. Without a conscious life purpose, of a man is totally lost, drifting, adapting to events rather than creating events. Now think about that. You're reacting to the outside world constantly. Instead of when you create, you actually have to go internally and create something. Without knowing his life purpose, a man lives a weakened, impotent existence. What a word, impotent. Perhaps eventually becoming sexually impotent or prone to mechanical and disinterested sex. Well, isn't that deep? Your purpose is what drives you. And, you talk to people that have children, and they'll say, that's my purpose. I'm going to do everything for my kids. I'm making my money so I could send my kids to a great university and for them to have a great life. And everything revolves around that decision of having a kid and treating them to a really good life. That's built in, and this is why a lot of people have kids, right? But your purpose can be deeper than that, right? And your purpose should line up with whatever you do as a job or a career, because you want to spend a lot of time on your purpose. And let me add to this, because I don't know if this is mentioned by him. Your purpose can change. You can try out a purpose for a while, and you can remix it. So if your original purpose was to become a history teacher, like myself, and to teach sports history, but then you went, actually, you know what? I don't want to jump through the hoops and get a PhD and do this and do that. But actually, if I went to teach abroad, I could maybe teach some other subjects at a university, and I don't have to necessarily get a PhD, but I could shape a different curriculum and still get to teach at the university level and deal with students of that group. And this is what I mean. When you're finding your purpose, it might not be clear at first. You got to play with it. You got to tussle with it. And you got to be able to reshape it like clay. Okay? A man must be prepared to give 100% to his purpose, fulfill his karma, or dissolve it. And then let go of that specific form of living. So what I would say to this is, if you have a purpose that you found and you somehow discover that it's no longer your purpose, or it's no longer your calling, or it's no longer your passion, you can dissolve it. A lot of people say, well, I can't quit now. I've been in it 10 years now. I'm not suggesting you become a quitter, but I'm suggesting you be real with yourself and honest with yourself when you've lost a taste for the challenge of what you're doing, or you lost a love for it, and you are completely okay with creating a new purpose as life changes. He must be capable of not knowing what to do with his life, entering a period of unknowingness, and waiting for a vision or a new form of purpose to emerge. And so right here he says, you can have a new purpose emerge. These cycles of strong specific action followed by periods of not knowing what the hell is going on are natural for a man who is shedding layers of karma and his relaxation into truth. Be willing to change everything in your life. This is actually fantastic advice if you're going through a breakup. Be willing to change everything in your life. Have you ever thought of that before? I mean, there's a lot of people that stay on the same track because it's safe. There's a lot of people I talk to that are still living with family members. And there's financial obligations in that, and I understand that. But at some point, how are you looking at things and you're going, do I want to live here forever? Right? Among the signs of fulfilling or completing a layer of purpose are these. Number 1, you suddenly have no interest whatsoever in a project or mission that just previously motivated you highly. Number 2, you feel surprisingly free of any regrets whatsoever for starting the project or for ending it. Even though you may not have the slightest idea of what you are going to do next, you feel clear, unconfused, and especially unburdened. You feel an increase in energy at the prospect of seizing your involvement with the project. Number 5, the project seems almost silly, like collecting shoelaces or wallpapering your room. So you're allowed to say, you know what, I'm done with this. I gave it a shot. I gave it some of my interest. I even created a project. And halfway through, you're going, wow, I have no desire to finish this. I don't see a finish line. I just recently saw Sam Harris, who's an author. He's got a famous podcast. He's someone that's quite famous and considered a highly knowledgeable individual. And he said that right now, when he reads books, he says he has no problem when he's reading a book to go, you know what, 1 chapter, I'm done. I'm not really interested. It hasn't grabbed me. I don't have the time. I don't want to spend the time just to finish it. I kind of got an idea that I don't really like this book or where it's headed, and I'll just put it down. And that's a simple model of what he's talking about here, that, you know, if you don't like something or you don't like where it's headed, redirect the ship, recalibrate, find some space, because you have to make space to find a new purpose, to find a new passion, or find a new project. And so you have to be willing to let go of whatever you're doing now that really isn't exciting you or consuming you, right? Don't use your family as an excuse, or don't use your breakup as an excuse for a lot of you out there. Or don't use your spouse's or your partner's family. If a man never discovers his deepest purpose, or if he permanently compromises it and uses his family as an excuse for doing so, then his core becomes weakened and he loses depth and presence. His woman loses trust and sexual polarity with him, even though he may be putting much energy into parenting their children and doing the housework. A man should, of course, be a full participant in caring for children and a household. But if he gives up his deepest purpose to do so, ultimately everyone suffers. So this is an interesting statement, and there's probably people like this that have become a house mom that's a man, and that's okay. They've taken up all the chores, Mr. Mom, if you will. But if they lose track of a separate purpose in their life that's important to them, and let me just give you an example. Someone that's in the military for 20, 30 years. I've had clients that are career military people. They seem very clear on their purpose because since they were 18, 20 years old, when a lot of people enlist, they were trained and they go through a rank where they constantly have a new finish line where they can move up into a position. They know their rules. They're given missions. They know their identity. Now, I'm not suggesting that you join the military. I'm just giving you this as an example. And if you look at career military men and women, we can add that to this because they're the same. They're extremely close to their families. They are generally good parents. I don't know individual cases, but it doesn't take away from who they are as a parent that they're putting their mission or the military first, because that is their purpose. That's the way they provide for their family, and that's the way they feel significant in society and proud of who they are. And in their free time, and when they do make time, they make the best of it with their families. And you see this all the time when you see someone from the military reunited with their family after being away for 6 months or a year and a half. And I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong or right. I'm simply saying that these people are clear on their purpose. And when they're clear on their purpose, it makes them stronger individuals on other aspects of their lives. And what happens when you don't have your purpose and you don't have a place that you feel really good about outside of just being a good parent and doing the housework or making your wife happy in the moment is eventually you grow contempt and eventually you lose a feeling of significance. You lose a feeling of contribution outside of the family, and it takes a little piece of you. And things start to get monotonous, and that's when eventually, again, someone can erupt. Someone can suddenly, all of a sudden go, what happened to this guy? Well, he's been holding it in for a while, right? Don't get lost in tasks and duties. Whatever the specifics of a man's purpose, he must always refresh the transcendental element of his life through regular meditation and retreat. A man should never get lost in the details of his life and forget that ultimately and in truth, life amounts to nothing other than what is the deepest truth of this present moment. Tasks don't get a man anywhere more conscious or free than he is capable of being in the present moment. I think this is why men go away on retreats for hunting and fishing eons and eons ago, right? Because they need to get away. They need to get solitude. They need to be on their own to figure out who they are. If someone's constantly in traffic or constantly in chaos at home, pouring cereal for the kids and turning off the TV and getting coffee for your wife and doing these kinds of things, how are you going to get in touch with who you want to be and what's your purpose? It's a good question, right? And if you see a lot of healthy relationships, there is the man in the relationship usually has an outlet, whether that's hunting or fishing, and I'm only using those examples because they're relevant in my life, and my father used them and my grandfather used them. And they would go away for a week or a weekend, and sometimes it was with other male friends or sometimes it was alone. And it resets the dial and they get in touch with who they are and what they want, and they get in touch with nature, and that's a form of meditation also. Stop hoping for your woman to get easier. A woman often seems to test her man's capacity to remain unperturbed in his truth and purpose. She tests him to feel his freedom and depth of love, to know that he is trustable. Her tests may come in the form of complaining, challenging him, changing her mind, doubting him, distracting him, or even undermining his purpose in a subtle or not so subtle way. A man should never think his woman's testing is going to end and his life will get easier. Rather, he should appreciate that she does these things to feel his strength, integrity, openness. Her desire for his deepest truth and love. As he grows, so will her testing. So when I read this, you often think of shit test, right? And you know, if you've read about this before in other books, and The Rational Male maybe talks about this, and he's saying that this is going to be never ending and this is going to be part of your relationship, and you need to step up to the challenge and not run from it, not take it critically, but actually deal with it on a one-on-one basis. And what I mean by a one-on-one basis is he calls it a dance. I think it's going to be part of the next chapter, but he calls it a dance where you're dancing with the moment. You're dancing with the woman. You're dealing with her feminine and your masculine. And when she shit tests you, it's an individual thing that you're going to have to deal with, and you're going to have to deal with regularly. And what she's doing is she's testing you. She's seeing if you can stand up for yourself. She's seeing that if you can stick to your values and your morals. And if you can't, some women unconsciously will take advantage of this, and they'll put you in a place where they'll keep pushing you in the corner and getting you to do what they want. And I've said this before. This isn't something that he mentions in his book, but it is human nature to take advantage when you can. And that's a broad statement. It's a statement that I had an anthropology professor explain in a class 20 years ago, but it's stuck with me. It's human nature to take advantage when you can. And humans overall are testing this, right? And this is why we have someone that's the nice guy, right? He's just too nice. And the woman, when she tests him, she immediately finds out he's not up to the test, and that's when the dating ends really quick. And I've come across this a few times, and the guy doesn't know he's doing it. He believes he's being nice. He believes he's doing the right thing. But in reality, the woman's going, no, you're not some guy that's going to be on his purpose. You're not going to be able to be there for me. You're not going to be able to display masculine energy regularly. And if you can't stand up to me for what you believe is right or wrong, then you probably can't stand up to the rigors and challenges of life. So I'm going to stop at this point, and I'm going to make this a chopped up book series. So this is your first part. Please put in the comments below if you like this format, if you've read The Way of the Superior Man before, what was your favorite quote or favorite part, and there will be a part 2 to this book review. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel.